Chapter 35. 3 weeks later, Shoyo was packing when he heard a knock on the door. He brushed the dust off of his t-shirt and looked through the peephole. "Oh, God. You found me. May I come in?" Shoyo opened the door. "Knock yourself out." Tadashi looked different. His hair was longer. His year-round tan had faded. "What brings you to New York?" Tadashi laid a garment bag over the back of the sofa and looked around. "Hello to you too, Sho." He zeroed in on one of the family photos on the wall. "You look a lot like your mother." Shoyo continued packing books into a box. Sucking up Tadashi. "What the hell do you need from me now?" "Not at all." His voice was gentler than normal. "I'm just not sure what to say to you. Standing here in your father's apartment." He pointed at the box. "Can I help with that?" Shoyo's shoulders relaxed. Tadashi wasn't the enemy. In fact, he could be a good listener when he wanted to be. He set the books down and gave him his full attention. "I'm sorry. How are you, Tadashi?" "I'm okay." Tadashi shoved his hands into his pockets. "Worried about you and Kei. Hoping I didn't ruin everyone's lives." Shoyo's already sad expression turned into one of pain as he frowned. "I think the verdict is still out." He couldn't look at him. He turned back to his box of books. Tadashi stood next to him, wrapping an arm around him. "What can I do?" Shoyo gripped the book in his hand, trying to keep his emotions at bay. He didn't want to cry in front of Tadashi, but he'd never felt so alone in his whole life. His dad was gone. Kei was gone. He'd been all alone in that apartment, trying to decide what of his father's things to keep and what to give away. Everything held a memory. Even his dad's ties were special, mostly because he'd picked them out for him. But what good would it do to pack everything up and store it away for years on end? No, it would be best to give most of it away. If he could just muster up the courage. It surprised them both when Shoyo buried his face in Tadashi's chest. He let go of the book and gripped onto the lapel of his jacket. Tadashi ran his hand over his hair. "Shish. It's okay. It's going to be okay." Tadashi took a swallow of the beer Shoyo had found in the fridge for him. "It's a surprisingly nice view out here." Shoyo leaned on the metal balcony. "It gets the afternoon sun. And if you lean out and tilt your head just right, you can see the river." Tadashi eyed Shoyo closely for a moment. He had calmed down some. Even joked about how claustrophobic New York apartments felt to him now. He also apologized for the big, wet stain on his jacket, and followed that up with how ugly the jacket was anyway. Typical Shoyo. Which was what he'd hoped to see. He took another sip of beer and said, "Kei's in town." He tried to look casual as he waited for a response. Shoyo stiffened. "Why?" "He's going on the not-so-late show tonight." Shoyo turned away from him, looking out at the view. "Oh, he'll be promoting the season finale." "Yeah, of course. Makes sense. I'd like you to show up and surprise him." Johnny Falcon's always up for a good surprise. They wanted both of you anyway. And this makes it more fun. Shoyo squeezed the metal railing with both hands. "You haven't asked about Tobio. I assume you've done all you can. Short of marrying him." "Of course." Tadashi grinned, showing off his very white smile. Shoyo reached over and whacked his shoulder. "Hey, what was that for?" "Because it's not funny, Tadashi." "Hey." Tadashi reached out and squeezed his shoulder. "Whatever happens with him, we'll deal with the fallout. No one blames you anymore. There won't be any fallout. I'm doing what has to be done. I was going to contact you anyway so I could get the name of the lawyer who wrote up the original contract." The worry lines in Tadashi's forehead deepened. "Oh, God. Is he blackmailing you?" "No." Shoyo shook his head. "I'm going to use the money Kei gave me to pay off Tobio's student loans. In exchange, he'll sign whatever kind of gag order I need him to sign." "So, he is blackmailing you." Tadashi wasn't so sure about this little plan. "It was my idea, not his. He just wanted me, and that's not going to happen." "And he agreed? Just like that?" Shoyo's gaze fell. He found a spot of peeling paint on the railing and picked at it. "Just like that." He took a breath and looked at Tadashi. "He has a lot of growing up to do, but I have no doubt he'll make a difference in this world one day. I'm fine with it." Words. Those were just words. Tadashi could see in Shoyo's eyes how hurt he was. He considered it for a moment and then said, "Let me handle the contract. I'd rather you didn't ever see him again. In fact, I'll put that in the deal as well. No contact. Period." Shoyo gave him a nod. "Thank you, Tadashi. I'll tell him to expect your call." He turned and leaned against the balcony with his arms folded. "So, you want me to show up and surprise Kei on Falcon? What does that get us?" "Lots of airtime. Especially if you kiss him. And ratings for the show. Which are great, by the way." Shoyo lowered his gaze and furrowed his brow. Looking worried. "I haven't answered Kei's texts. He's aware. I don't have anything to wear. All those nice clothes Shauna picked out for me are in California." Tadashi opened the balcony door. "Let's go inside." He set his empty beer bottle down and unzipped the garment bag. "I went to see Shauna before I left." He pulled a dark maroon suit out of the bag. He held it up with a pair of black dress boots. "You'll knock everyone off their chair wearing this." Shoyo put a hand in his hair. Smoothing it down. "I'll need help with. Just say the word and I'll have hair and makeup here in half an hour." He checked his watch. They didn't have a lot of time. Shoyo ran his fingers over the suit. "It'll be good for the show. And you swear this isn't a setup? Kei knows nothing about this?" He put up his hands. "I swear. It'll be a total surprise. And Shoyo, I'm still your publicist." Shoyo smirked. "Gee, thought you dumped me. Let's just say Kei and I were both a bit hasty." Shoyo rolled his eyes. "Hasty? God, Tadashi, you both threw me out on my ass. I still have the bruises." They didn't have time to rehash the past. He'd apologize profusely later. He tapped his watch. "We're on the clock here." Shoyo threw his hands up. "Okay, let's do it." Tadashi pulled out his phone, tapped a button, and put it to his ear. "It's a go." Tadashi opened the door, letting Yachi into the green room. She screamed and jumped up and down when she saw Shoyo. "Shish." Tadashi chuckled. "I'm sorry. Can I hug you?" "Of course." Shoyo opened his arms. "I don't want to ruin your suit. It looks so good on you." "You won't." "How are you, Yachi?" Shoyo had missed Yachi's sweet, joyful demeanor. Yachi pulled back from the hug and looked Shoyo up and down. "He's gonna die. For so many reasons. He's just gonna die. I love what they did with your hair." Shoyo touched the soft curls that framed his face. He didn't usually wear it this curly. But it seemed to pair well with the suit. "Yeah, I kinda like it too." Yachi bubbled up with excitement, clapping her hands. "I can't believe this is happening. Kei is so sad without you." Everyone in the room stilled, including another guest and his assistants. "I mean, because you've been in New York." Yachi quickly clarified. Tadashi opened the door. "It's time." Yachi wished Shoyo good luck and gave him a thumbs up. Then she turned to the TV monitor. "And we're back with Kei Tsukihina." Tadashi led Shoyo to the edge of the stage and stood there in the dark with him. "You doing okay?" Shoyo grabbed his hand. He was nervous as hell. What if he froze up when he saw Kei and things got awkward? What if the hug was weird? What if he couldn't find anything nice to say to Johnny? He took a deep breath and tried to imagine what this moment would be like if the whole thing with Tobio hadn't happened. If they were still madly in love and nothing had come between them. If he had actually moved into Kei's bedroom. What would that be like? Shoyo looked at the small monitor hanging on the wall next to them. He focused on Kei. God, he looked stunning in blue. "What is that? Turquoise?" Shoyo smiled, remembering the first day he met Kei. Shades of blue. That's what Kei was to him. Including the saddest shade of blue. But he couldn't think about that right now. He needed to focus on the positive. Like how cute Kei's hair looked pulled back. It was simple and a little shorter than it had been before. "You're gonna do great." Shoyo closed his eyes and took a deep breath. This was it. Make or break. They'd either come off looking crazy in love, or completely awkward and barely able to look at each other. Shoyo took a step back. Maybe this was just another one of Tadashi's stupid ideas. He clasped his hands together and bowed his head like he was praying. It was too late to run. Focus. Focus on the good stuff. Focus on Nappa. His lips. His laugh. His scent. The way he. Shoyo opened his eyes and looked at the monitor again. The way he makes love. Shoyo smiled. That was a memory he could hang on to. Johnny Falcon thrummed the desk with both hands. Then leaned in toward Kay. Okay. The studio sent over a clip of the season finale of Leo's Appeal. So why don't you set it up for us? Kay crossed his legs and rested his hands in his lap. Sure. So, Leo is defending a murderer. A murderer. Wow. That doesn't sound like the clip I saw. It doesn't? Kay looked at the audience and then at Johnny. Let's show the clip. Shoyo's boxer-covered ass showed up on the big screen and the audience roared. They played about 10 seconds of their love scene. Most of it Kay watched through his fingers. Once it was over he looked at Johnny and said, "That wasn't the season finale." "It wasn't?" Johnny tapped his cheek. "I wonder what happened. That was last week's episode," Kay said, chuckling. "And it was hot hot hot." Johnny stood up and gave him a standing ovation. The audience joining in. Kay covered his face with his hands as he turned bright red. Shoyo looked at Tadashi and they both laughed. Johnny sat back down. Seriously though, where's Shoyo tonight? Shit. This was it. Shoyo smoothed down his jacket and straightened his shoulders. We're still in love, he whispered to himself. Everything's fine. Kay hesitated slightly before answering the question. But he quickly recovered. He's here in New York. We shot the last episode and then he came back here to take care of some family business. Have you seen him yet? No. I flew in right before the show. Do you miss him? Kay didn't hesitate at all before answering that question. Terribly. The whole audience gave him a collective awe. Johnny looked at the audience. Should we help him out, folks? Tadashi put his hand on Shoyo's back. You're on. Shoyo walked out onto the stage and the audience went crazy. He stopped and waved to them. Kay turned around and gasped. He stood up and covered his mouth with his hands. Shoyo focused on the step he had to take up onto the stage, making sure he didn't trip and fall. Then his eyes met Kay's. And time stood still for a second. The words he was going to say were long gone. His mind was blank. Those eyes had taken him in and he was lost. Kay reached out for him, taking his hands. Hearing his name brought everything back into focus. And words he never planned on saying came pouring from his mouth. Hey love, I missed you too. He reached up and cupped Kay's cheek. Can I kiss you? The audience went crazy again. Having heard the question, Shoyo didn't wait for an answer. He leaned in and gave Kay a sweet, gentle kiss, then pulled away. It wasn't enough for Kay. He grabbed Shoyo's face and laid one on him. The audience went insane. Kay took Shoyo's hand and led him over to Johnny. He shook Shoyo's hand and went back behind the desk. Shoyo sat next to Kay on the sofa. Johnny chuckled, pointing at Kay. Look at you. You're so happy. Kay put his hand on Shoyo's knee. Wouldn't you be? The audience went wild again. Shoyo covered Kay's hand with his own. I'm the lucky one, Johnny. So, do we get to hear how all of this came about? Shoyo looked at Kay. Can I tell the story? Kay gave him a nod, even though there was a flicker of fear in his eyes. Sure. We met in a Starbucks. Kay is a huge fan of Light of Day. Kay pursed his lips together as he silently chuckled. That's the daytime soap you were on. Johnny clarified for the audience. Yes. So anyway, Kay recognized me and introduced himself. We quickly became friends, and when he had his mountain biking accident and broke his arm, I happened to be staying in his guest house. So, you were there when that happened. Shoyo was a godsend, Kay said, breaking into the conversation. It was a bad break and I was a mess for weeks. Before Kay could say anything else, Shoyo continued with his version of the story. Yeah, and they were scheduled to start shooting the next season of Leo's Appeal in less than 2 weeks. So we came up with a storyline that would include his broken arm. The writers ran with it. And that's how I ended up on Leo's Appeal. Johnny gestured with his finger at both of them. Doing love scenes with Kei Tsukihina. Was that part of the storyline you came up with? No, Kei quickly clarified. That was all the writers. I think we have the first kiss. Do we have that? Let's show that, Johnny said. They watched the first kiss scene and the audience whistled and hollered. Johnny cleared his throat. So, was there a lot of practice getting that scene just right? Shoyo shook his head and Kei joined in. No, that was our very first kiss. Johnny's mouth fell open. We have your very first kiss on tape? Shoyo leaned in. He gave me a little tongue, Johnny. He looked at Kei. Or, did I give you tongue? Kei turned bright red again. Anyway, Shoyo said with a shrug. There was a little tongue. And the rest is history? Johnny asked. Kei intertwined his fingers with Shoyo's. Off the market. Johnny gestured at them with a sweeping move. Kei Tsukihina and Shoyo Hinata. Ladies and gentlemen. Kei got out of the car behind Shoyo. It had been an awkwardly quiet ride to Shoyo's apartment. Not even Tadashi and Yachi's excitement over how well the show had gone could cover up the fact that Shoyo had nothing to say to Kei once they were off stage. It was as if a switch had been flipped, turning off the light in Shoyo's eyes. But it wasn't all just an act. The kiss was real. Shoyo had kissed Kei back. He had gripped his waist and held onto him during the kiss. Just like the first one. Kei realized, Shoyo's kisses had never been fake. And Kei couldn't let it end like this. He had to try. A huge soap fan, huh? Kei asked as he followed Shoyo to the apartment building. He hoped he could break the ice. Now I'm going to have to watch old episodes just so I'll know what's going on. In case anyone ever asks. Yeah, well, you deserved it. Shoyo didn't stop or turn around. I'm sure I deserve a lot of things. Including the silent treatment I got in the car. But, Shoyo stopped at the door and turned around. Tadashi told me about Tobio. I plan to repay you. Whatever amount you end up giving him. Shoyo shook his head. No, it feels better this way. He sighed deeply. More honest. Less dirty. Please. Just give me a minute. He looked around to see if anyone was near enough to hear. I know I've said it over and over in emails and texts. But I need to say it in person. He took a step closer. I'm so sorry I doubted you. After everything we went through together. The way you took care of me. He sucked in a breath. Trying to hold back the tears. I should have handled it so much better than I did. I should have given me a chance to fix it. Shoyo interrupted. Which I have. I know. And I will never doubt you again. Shoyo hesitated. Okay, are we done? I hope not. God, I hope not. Kei reached out his hand. Shoyo stared at the hand and then his gaze met Kei's. He faltered again, but then straightened his shoulders. I can't. He turned to open the door. I have a brother. Shoyo slowly turned around. What? I have a brother. Kei was embarrassed to say the words. A half-brother. I want to meet him. But I can't do it alone. Will you go with me? Shoyo shook his head in confusion. You have a brother. And you've never met him? How old is he? Kei kept his eyes on the ground. How old is your brother Kei? Shoyo's voice had a little more force behind it now. They live in Connecticut. Will you go with me to see my dad and my brother? Shoyo turned back to the door and punched in the security code. I can't do it alone. I won't. Wow. Shoyo scoffed. This feels like emotional blackmail. He folded his arms and looked Kei in the eye. You don't need me by your side to meet your own brother. And you don't need me by your side when you tell your father that you've finally forgiven him. You're so much stronger than you think, Kei. He's 18. Kei lowered his gaze, embarrassed that he had a brother. He'd never bothered to get to know. A look of disbelief crossed Shoyo's features. He started to say something but stopped. In a softer tone he said, and you're his cool celebrity brother. Just plan on being all over his Instagram. You don't think he'll hate me forever. He'll love you, no matter what. He's gonna love finally knowing you. Kei looked away. A glimmer of hope flashed across Kei's face. You really think so? Shoyo pointed at the building with his thumb. I need to go. I have a lot of packing to do. Kei looked up at the building, trying to remember which floor Shoyo's dad's apartment was on. Since we're giving out advice, do you mind if I give you some? Shoyo punched in the code again. ignoring Kei. Don't sell it. Shoyo turned back around. Don't sell your dad's apartment, Sho. I mean, what's the rush? It'll just sit empty. Not really. Kei took a step closer. Everything you have left of your parents is in that apartment. It can be your New York pied-à-terre. Shoyo chuckled at that. Yeah, I guess it could. A wave of sadness crossed his features. Kei wanted to wrap his arms around Shoyo and take away the sadness. Or, better yet, offer to go up and make coffee and talk all night. So he wouldn't have to be in that apartment all alone. He was grasping for ideas. Anything to keep him in Shoyo's orbit a little longer. But the look on Shoyo's face told him that wouldn't be welcomed. Thanks for what you did tonight. I think I was boring Johnny to death before you showed up. Well, technically I'm still under contract. So, you'll go with me to visit my dad and meet my brother? You know, as my supportive boyfriend? Kei knew he was pushing it. But it wouldn't hurt to try one more time. Nice try, but you're on your own with that one. Shoyo lifted his chin toward the car. Tadashi and Yachi are getting paid. Don't worry about them. Shoyo smiled, and this time it made his eyes sparkle. You'll be the death of me. Kei Tsukihina. Kei snorted. How many times have you said that in your head over the past year? Too many to count. Shoyo reached out and pushed Kei's hair behind his ear. Then cupped his cheek. We managed to have a few laughs, didn't we? Kei covered Shoyo's hand with his own. Too many to count. Take care of yourself. Don't ride that bike too hard. Shoyo stepped away and punched in the security code. Too late. Shoyo went still but didn't turn around. The big sigh had Kei hopeful for a few seconds. So did the slight shake of Shoyo's head. It was okay. He could be disappointed, disgusted, whatever, so long as he turned back around. Yell at me, Sho. Yell at me for riding too hard. Yell at me for everything. Just don't walk away. The door opened. A couple came out of the building and walked the other way. That wasn't our first kiss, Sho. Shoyo held the door open and turned his head. But didn't look at Kei. I know. I wanted to kiss you back that night. I wanted. Kei sucked in air. I wanted to do more than that. Shoyo met his gaze. You should have. The door closed, leaving Kei standing on the sidewalk alone. He stared at the door, tears welling up in his eyes. Tadashi took his arm. Come on. Kei didn't move. Tadashi tugged lightly. Let's go. He wrapped his arm around him and led him back to the car.